merciful is the ability to step into someone else's skin and feel their pain and walk a mile in their shoes to see how they feel and the hurt that they experience. That's mercy, beloved. Matthew chapter 5. As we look into another episode of our sermon series entitled, It's a Different World. Jesus gathers his disciples on this mountainside. He's just not preaching a sermon, but he's engaging them in discipleship training. He's shaping their hearts, their minds, and their character to truly understand what it means to follow him. Jesus teaches these principles that we are walking through entitled the Beatitudes to tell them that when you follow him, you have to live life radically different than the rest of the world. We begin at verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit. We looked at blessed are those who mourn, verse 4. We talked about being meek in verse number 5. Today we arrive to verse number 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. You may be seated. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. I want to talk for a few moments with your help, with the Lord's help in your prayers, giving what you received. If you don't know by now, I am a history enthusiast. I'm an avid reader, and I love to examine and read historical events. One of the fascinating people, Brother Nelson Christian Sr., that I've read about over the years is this French emperor by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte. It is said that he was never soft on crime. And the story is told that he had a soldier who was about to be punished for being disobedient repeatedly to several orders. Because of this, Napoleon had this soldier prepared to be executed. His mother got word of it, and she came, and she could not bear the thought of the emotional pain of losing her child, but her only son. She humbly approached Napoleon and began to beg for a pardon. Napoleon replied, "Your son has committed the offense twice, and the law and justice demands his death." The mother responded, "Sir, I didn't ask for justice. I plead for mercy." Napoleon answered, "Well, ma'am, your son doesn't deserve mercy." She looked at him and said, "Sir, it wouldn't be mercy if he deserved it. And mercy is all I ask for." Beloved, like this mother who's pleading for the life of her son, we one day must stand before a king who holds justice in his hands. But instead of turning us away, he lavishes us with mercy. And if we receive such mercy, how can we not be willing to extend mercy to other people? Beloved, I want to submit to you greater thankful that mercy is more than a concept. It's a calling. We often underestimate the power, struggling to define it, yet we know it when we experience it. Mercy is what the guilty plead for. Mercy is what the struggling student who turns in an assignment late is asking the teacher for. Mercy is what parents give their children when they say, "You know I owe you a whooping." But above all, mercy is what God has abundantly poured in my life, in your life. However, the challenge is just not about receiving mercy, but the challenge today is about learning how to extend mercy. Let the church shout mercy. Church, can I be honest with us today? Life makes it difficult to be merciful. When we've been hurt, when you've been betrayed, when you've been let down, mercy doesn't come easily. But Jesus calls us to a higher standard. He stood on this mountain not just to teach them, but to invite us into a mountaintop way of living. In this fifth kingdom characteristic, he declares, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain or receive mercy." The Beatitudes, beloved, reminds us that mercy is just not a transaction, but it's a transformation. The first four Beatitudes focus on our posture before God, and the latter ones challenge us in how we treat other people. Mercy is just not something we feel, but church, it is something that we do. We cannot allow our emotions to dictate our obedience to God. Some days, our hearts are tender, they're open and willing. But then there are some other days where you feel hardened, unwilling to extend grace or mercy. But mercy, beloved, is not rooted in how we feel, but it's rooted in who we follow. And if we follow Jesus Christ, then mercy must become not something that we do occasionally, but mercy ought to become our lifestyle. Lean in this way, church. Mercy is not just about withholding judgment. It is about stepping into somebody else's pain and offering relief. It is the tangible evidence of one's heart who has been transformed by God. So can I ask you a question today? Will we just receive mercy, or will we become merciful? I know someone saying, "Pastor, you don't know what they did to me." Pastor, you mean to tell me my responsibility is to help relieve somebody else's pain when I have my own portfolio of pain that I can hardly manage? I mean, I got bills. I got problems. I got issues that got issues. I got situations that got situations. And you want me to stop what I'm doing to help somebody else through their pain? That's what Jesus says. Because the uniqueness of our Christian journey and walk is when we have enough faith to help somebody else, God has a way of working on your situation in the midst of that. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but if I was in revival, here's why I would tell you to turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor, God works the night shift." That when you do what God tells you to do, when you take care of God's business, God will take care of your business. When you lend a helping hand to someone else, it lines you up for God to open a door for you. Can I give you, I feel pretty good here. Can I give you the sermon in the sentence here? Here it is. The mercy of God that God has shown us should move us to show mercy to someone else. Here's the challenge of the text today. Make compassion your lifestyle. Because, lean in, the same mercy you give today may be the same mercy you're going to need tomorrow. Can I say that right there again? Make compassion your lifestyle, because the same mercy you may give today may be the same mercy you need tomorrow. And that's what I came to tell somebody at Greater Thankful. I just came to tell you can be on the mountaintop today and you can be on the valley by 6 o'clock. I came to tell you can be healthy right now and you can be checked out tomorrow. I came to tell you, I know it's income tax season and you're balling out of control right now, but sooner or later one hospital visit or wipe your pockets clean. Tell somebody you ought to be kind. because your day is coming. And this is where we are, Tyrus. We don't know when our day is coming. My late grandmother, Maribel Marshall Johnson, would say like, just keep on living. Can we be real and transparent this morning? Many of us find it hard to be merciful because in the words of that Christian author, Max Lucado, there's been a crash that our hearts have endured, and it caused a proverbial oil spill of blackness in our lives. What is the substance that is seemingly keeping or taking over all of our areas of our lives? Can I lean in this way? For some of us, it's resentment. Some of us are dealing with resentment from emotional injuries. And for some, the injury is old. For some, the injury is still fresh. So fresh that you can scream right now. The pain for someone is because you've been abused by the hands of a family member or a friend or even a church member. The pain is a business deal that may have went wrong and now you're left with paying the debt. Maybe the pain is that you have been overlooked on the workplace. You come in on time, you stay late, you work when nobody else will, and they passed you up for the promotion. And to make matters worse, the person they hire, they want you to train. Maybe for someone else, it's more social because you have people who you thought were your friends. But every time they have an event, for some reason, they seem to forget you off the invite list. You find out on Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat. These are the unfortunate realities, beloved. They leave us because we're all human dealing with some sort of pain. Another part could be angry, and the final part is probably needing direction, and all equals to resentment. And then we're left with this one choice, Sister McMath. The choice is, do we flame our anger? Resentment for some of us has spilled over in every area of our lives. Pain on the job, you brought it home. And now what once was Little House on the Prairie has now become Nightmare on Elm Street. For some of you not only brought it home, but you brought it to church. They won't let you boss at the job. You can't boss at home. So we try to come to church. Talk, Saul. I'm doing the best I can with the scripture I brought out here. Sister Di, we don't know whether we want to keep it or do we want to let it die. And many of us can't see the pain of others because we're so blinded and overtaken by our own pain. Can I glean in this way? Mercy has a way of slipping through our hands because our misery has taken up all the good spaces in our lives. Listen to the text. Church, this is a call of action. However, the action is based on attitude. Child of God, being merciful is calling us to have an opposite attitude of our flesh and our nature. There is something inside in us that's the best of us that sometimes tempts us to lures us to be selfish and revengeful and indifferent. There are seemingly sometimes the easiest emotions. But can I ask a question? What is your response when you're confronted when someone needs mercy? Do you always have the excuse of being busy? You're so busy that you don't have time to help somebody else? Some of us are moving. We're like the rocking chair. You're moving, but you ain't going anywhere. Maybe you tell people like the good church answer, child, just pray about it. Everything will be all right. But sometimes people need help and prayer. They need food and prayer. They need help with a bill and prayer. Yeah, we fail to show mercy when we lack the urgency and cultivate the spirit of empathy for others. Listen, that death of mercy is not simply seeing the need, but mercy goes beyond the observation. Being merciful is the ability to step into someone else's skin and feel their pain and walk a mile in their shoes to see how they feel and the hurt that they experience. That's mercy, beloved. Colleague of mine, Dr. George Parks, pastors the Metropolitan Church in the DMV area, and he writes, him and another colleague of mine, Derek Easter, they write a devotional on this particular passage on Matthew chapter 5. And in that devotional, Parks tells the story of this lady by the name of Irma Bumbeck. She shares her story about one day she's in the airport waiting for her flight, and she's reading a book in the effort to shut everything out around her. This is what she says. She says she heard a voice next to her belonging to this elderly woman who said, "I bet it's cold in Chicago." She looks at the woman. The woman has a stone look on her face, and she replied, "It's likely. I haven't been to Chicago in several years." And the woman persists. She says, "My son lives there." And she says, "That's nice." She says, "My eyes continue to look on my book." But the woman followed up and said, "My husband's body is on this plane. We've been married 53 years. Bumbeck says, "I don't think I ever felt more detested with myself than at that moment. Another human being was screaming out loud to be heard in desperation, and I had turned into a cold stranger. I was more interested in a book than in a real-life drama right at my elbow." Bumbeck reports the woman talked numbly and steadily, and then they boarded the plane, and they found their individual seats, and she heard the woman's voice in the back of the plane, and she asked someone else, "I bet it's cold in Chicago." Can I tell you, church, we never know who God has around us that needs mercy. And this is my question to us today, Greater Thankful. Who's screaming near you and I for mercy? Christian author Ray Pritchard explains mercy like this: I see the need. That's recognition. I move by the need. That's motivation. I move to meet the need. That's action. Can I tell you what mercy looks like, Greater Thankful? Mercy looks like feeding the hungry, mentoring the lost, counseling the hurt, and giving a listening ear to someone in need. Imagine a world, what the world would look like if we just took a few moments to be merciful. The disciples, Jesus said to them, in as much as you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. Jesus says to the disciples, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was locked up in prison, you didn't come visit me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me water. The disciples asked Jesus, when were you thirsty? When were you in prison? When were you hungry? And Jesus says, in as much as you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me. Church, I came to tell somebody today, we got to show mercy. And let me stick a pen right here that's not in my notes. Showing mercy sometimes ain't all about you throwing money at the problem. Sometimes God needs your time and your talent. Is this thing on? Because we big about, I'll give a donation, but sometimes God needs you to go take yourself down there and serve. I knew I would lose some amen, so I had some in my back pocket. Because we become a people, let me say this in Black History Month, who forgot where we come from. We got a couple of nickels to rub together, and we just want to throw money at something. Sometimes God needs you to go down to the school. God needs you to show up at the homeless shelter. Sometimes God needs you to be willing to lend a helping hand. The money is good, but sometimes he needs your person. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, as you hope for mercy, you got to show mercy. Okay, let me share it this way. While you praying for God to bless you, and you see somebody else in need, pray for them. While you praying for God to be a blessing to our church and there are other churches in need, pray for God to bless them as well. when you see someone in between and they need a helping hand, God says stop by and help lift their hand up as well. While you are eating and sitting at the table and someone is passing by hungry, God says sometimes go to the line of Burger King or Jack's or Chick-fil-A or Top of the River or Brass and buy their meal as well. You got to learn how to show mercy. I'm done. But then finally, let's look at the effects of being merciful. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Now, this is in the emphatic tense, church. Those who show mercy can receive mercy. Listen, this is conditional. Jesus says you can't expect to get mercy and you don't want to show anybody any mercy. I think that's a word for us today, that sometimes we got to push past our selfish nature into the selfless territory of compassion and love. This is the only beatitude that the promise is the same as the condition. I wish y'all were hearing me here today. In the beginning of the text, mercy is a deed to do. But at the end of the text, mercy is a reward to receive. Listen, the more we realize how merciful God has been on us, it ought to awaken us with something on the inside to call us, push us, prod us to be merciful to other people. When you start realizing that all of the mercies that God has given you and I has been free without cause, this is the reality. We didn't deserve what he did. Mercy is a gem that everybody wants, but no one really deserves. Let me say that again. Mercy is a gem that everybody wants, but none of us really deserve. I'm in my seat. Story is told of a judge who was well respected because of his integrity. And one day in his courtroom, as the docket was being called, a defendant was brought in, and the entire courtroom got quiet. It was the judge's own son. The young man had broken the law, and the evidence was stacked against him. With a heavy heart, the judge declared justice must be served. He handed down the punishment and said guilty as charged. After he said guilty, he began to assess his punishment, and he made a fine so large that the son could never afford to pay. The son lowered his head, knowing he had embarrassed his father and knowing that he deserved the penalty. Then, in an unexpected moment, the judge removed his robe, walked down to in front of the bench, stood beside his son, pulling out his checkbook, and paid the fine himself. He then said, justice is satisfied and mercy is given. He said, my son was guilty, but his father bore the cost. Afterward, the father looked at his son and said, I've shown you mercy. Now go and show mercy to others. And that's all I come to tell you today, is that there was a time that you and I were guilty as charged. And what God decided to do is send down his son who bore our sins. And when he sent down his son who bore our sins, he died in our place. And thank God today that we have a God that didn't give us what we deserve, but he gave us mercy. Let's give God a hand clap of praise. Give God a hand clap.